First paragraph in the lesson, it says, the destruction of the end-time Babylon is a bad news for those who collaborate with the apostate religious system. For God's people, however, it is good news. Babylon was responsible for inducing the secular political powers to persecute and harm them. The destruction of this great adversary means deliverance and salvation for God's faithful people. It says that Babylon induces, this lesson is suggesting, Babylon induces secular powers to persecute. What does that sound like it's suggesting is the problem?
There was a sellout to Constantine at the Council of Nicaea where the church and the state merged. And I think that's what it's talking about.
So is responsible for inducing the secular powers to persecute and harm them. Is it sounding to you like the problem here is some type of a physical conflict? Persecuting, imprisoning, burning at the stake, those types of things? Well, what kind of war does Paul say we're in 2 Corinthians 10? We live in the world, we don't wage wars, the world does. The weapons we use are not worldly. They have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and pretensions that set themselves up against the knowledge of God. Is Babylon's primary attack on the saints a physical attack?
No. Well, history tells us that it has been at times.
The primary attack. Or were the physical attacks merely manifestations of ways to corrupt minds?
Right.
Induce fear, for instance, to get people to compromise their real heart's loyalties. So was the real attack against the body, or was the real attack always against the mind and heart? Those methods were used, as you're pointing out, for sure. But when we focus on that Babylon was responsible for inducing secular powers to persecute, I don't disagree that happened historically, but do we miss, by focusing on that, the real war, which is going on here?
Coercion was like a tool of last resort. If you couldn't convince someone in any other way, inducing them by bribery or convincing them by logic, coercion was the tool that was then used. If you won't agree with this, we'll make you do it.
So this is Satan's method. First method of Satan his first approach is? Lies. Always deceit. Christ's temptation, when he tempted Christ in the wilderness, he approaches him with deceptions and lies. Then the next deception that you pointed out just now is inducements, bribery. Hey, I will give you all these lands and all this power if you'll follow me. And the third one, if we're not deceived and we're not bought off, then the third one is coercion. They crucified him. This is the way the devil always works. Deception, bribery, coercion. These are the ways of the beast. This is the beastly system, the beastly method. Now, as we look at the end of time, how could the devil get Christian people who put their faith in Christ, who claim their loyalty to Jesus, to actually cooperate with state powers to use coercive methods on others? What issues might be involved? I'm going to throw out some I've heard. Climate change and to save the earth. Pass laws to have 1 day of rest a week to reduce carbon emissions. Would this really be part of the beastly system? No. Because it would be no different than the laws to get your cars inspected for emissions or any other laws on water cleanliness or anything else, as long as there's no worship involved. If it's simply that this is an Environmental Protection Act, and we're going to have laws that restrict certain behaviors you can take to protect the environment, but there's no religious and worship elements attached, then it is not a matter of conscience anymore. In the same way, we have laws on recycling things, laws on power plants emissions, laws that you get your car inspected, and it's enforced by punishment, fines and other things if you don't follow the laws. But none of that is part of the beastly system.
But if they made it that you couldn't do anything, you couldn't drive your car or anything on a Saturday, that's the only day that they made that you couldn't do anything.
So they would make the whole world rest on the Sabbath, and you would oppose that?
I'm not talking about resting. I'm talking about they wouldn't let you go to church or anything.
You couldn't go to work either, so nobody can work on Sabbath. You'd oppose that?
Well, they could be out mowing the lawn and pounding people.
No, because they can't use their little engines unless they're using the kind that they have the blades that just spin like in the 50s.
I still.
See, the point is, if it's just about carbon emissions and pollution, don't get tricked into, it has to have some element of worship involved, some element of your conscience involved in order for it to be part of the beastly system. Does that make sense? States pass laws all the time on various things of environment, all the time. What about laws regarding marriage and abortion? Could these be avenues that Satan could use to get good Christian people to seek to enforce their beliefs on others by using the power of the state? You understand?
I think it's wrong. I don't think we should be using the power of the state to enforce the conscience.
So this is not a discussion about whether you think certain forms of marriage are right and certain forms of marriage are wrong, or whether abortion is right or abortion. It's not a discussion about that. It's a discussion about, regardless of where your belief is on those issues, should we use the power of state to force other people to practice your beliefs?
No.
That's the question. Could Christians be duped into participating in coercive methods to enforce their beliefs on these issues on others?
They already have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, there already have been, she said. Yes.
I believe that also fear plays a part because of the major number of calamities that are occurring. They'll say, well, God is removed and he's cursing us, so we need to appease God and keep all his laws, including Sunday.
So you're raising another possibility, a Sunday law, as a possibility,
Yeah, because, like I said,
which is a historic Adventist perspective that many Adventists have taught. There'll be a law that comes along and they'll pass a law. My view on that is it's possible, but it's not. We shouldn't lock ourselves into that. There are many. See, the Adventist Church historically in the 19th century took a very strong view that that was what was coming. And if you read the historic Adventist documents, in 1888, a message came, which is the healing gospel that we're teaching, that was followed up by legislative activity in our Congress, and this is all a matter of historical record, where legislation was put into the Congress to pass Sunday legislation for religious observances in the 1890s in our country. And Ellen White describes that all heaven was geared up for the second coming to happen, but this church apostatized by rejecting this healing gospel and embracing penal substitution instead, going down the legal imperial model, and therefore they rejected the final message from the Holy Spirit, and heaven had to delay. So it's potentially, if you understand how Bible prophecy works, the whole Saturday Sunday issue may never actually come to fruition again in the future, because it may have been one of those conditional prophecies like you read about Israel in the Old Testament, that we never fulfilled our role at that time, and now Satan has got a new strategy to get the same method. And so what I want people to understand, and I'm not saying it couldn't be that, it could be, it still could. But I think we miss the boat when we absolutely go out and insist it can only be this mechanism. We really need to watch for the method, not the specific way the method is enforced. And the method is coercing people with state power to comply on conscientious issues of religion, no matter what that issue is. So one possibility is what you're saying, and I'm open to it. And if it happens, I will be the first to say, you know what? It's wrong for the state to coerce people to go to church on any day of the week. And if the church and the state came along and say, well, let's have people go to church on Saturday, and if they don't, they'll get punished. We should oppose that.
Amen.
That's wrong. Okay? So I just want people to be thinkers. Don't get stuck because there's some strong language about that. Yes?
I think the confusing issue for me has to do with the role of government and how we interact with that. Paul makes it clear that we should respect the role of government. They have a legitimate role to punish, for example, murderers. And, if we have a part in that, are we imposing our beliefs, or are we simply imposing, our agreement that murder is a bad thing? third trimester abortion to me is a very bad thing. I don't want to impose, my beliefs.
I'm going to cut that off. We're not talking about the right and wrong of abortion. And we could very easily go down that trail, but we're not going to do that. It's about the methods we employ. But this argument, every time I bring it up, somebody has to go down that argument. And I have 100 arguments on the other side to show it's coercing conscience. If we want to have that discussion afterwards, we can. But I think the principles that we want to look at is, when we have issues of conscience and faith, do we believe that we should convert people, or do we believe we should coerce people? And the big difference, and I will just say this because you're bringing up the third trimester abortion, the big difference is that in a murder of an individual, you're not doing anything else to somebody else's body except the person you're murdering. The difference on an abortion, regardless of when it happens, is you're doing something to the woman's body in addition to the fetal body. And that's the difference. And some people can't get their mind around that. And they say, well, it doesn't matter. It's that baby we got to protect. Of course it matters. It always matters when you have another individual involved on their participation in what you're doing to that individual. It always matters. So again, I'm not arguing the right and wrong of whether we should or shouldn't pass those laws. I'm arguing on the moral implication side. I'm arguing as a Christian, do we present truth and love and leave people free? Or do we coerce people to do it our way? And by the way, the entire abortion pro-life community, the pro-life community, does not actually believe abortion is murder. Everybody who thinks they do, they're fraudulent. How can I can prove it to you. The evidence when Trump was running for president, if you remember, Trump came out publicly and said, we should prosecute every woman who has an abortion for murder because they're murdering babies. And immediately the pro-life community, not the pro-choice community, overwhelmingly came down on him and said, no, absolutely not. Stop it. Don't say it. Don't do it. We won't do it. But what happens, do you remember the story of Susan Smith? Susan Smith had a boyfriend, had 2 children, 2 and 4. She put her children in her car, drove it into the ocean, drowned both her kids because her boyfriend didn't want to have the kids. Should we prosecute her for drowning her 2 children, 2 and 4? Pretty much 100% of people say, yes, we should prosecute her. It's murder. Then why is it they don't want to prosecute all these young mothers or women who get abortions? See, the fact they don't want to prosecute lets you really know somewhere inside they don't believe it's murder. It's an evidence they don't want to look at. It's an uncomfortable truth they don't want to acknowledge. Again, not the right and wrong of it. I'm just pointing out that there's inconsistency here. And our goal as Christians are to convert people, not coerce people. But I want to really get on to this lesson we're about to jump into, because this is the real critical stuff. And let's not get off on the abortion question. And all you online, don't send me emails about abortion to promote why you think it's murder. I don't want to hear them. Okay? Truly. Because that's not our discussion. Focus on what the discussion is. And the discussion is on Christ saving people. And I want to tell you, I really, really am convinced that the abortion question, no matter where you come down on it, is one of Satan's issues to divert the church's attention away from converting people to Christ and fight politically amongst themselves. I really think that's the primary purpose of it, to get political activity and state involvement rather than bringing people to Christ. And if you bring people to Christ and you write the law in their heart and mind, what's going to happen to the whole question of abortion? It's going to resolve itself because they're going to be Christ-like in their heart. Okay? And that's the real focus. So, the lesson points us to the 5th seal of Revelation chapter 6. And I just want to read you this 5th seal.